All right. Again, we welcome everyone. And we welcome Dr. Ben.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to be here today. And get her up and going here.
So Dee said that the brain is very forgetful. So we want to make sure that we remember everything that's being taught, please, because these are important. These are lessons of health that you need to be able to take with you when you're going out to help others and you help yourself. 479 pattern of breathing. Thank you, iPhone. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. The screen, everyone see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, welcome. This is the title of this information is called Structure for the Upright, Introduction to Bone Metabolism. Upright how? Upright in spirit, stature, and substance. And the bone of symbol here is a rib, and we'll talk a little bit about that just shortly. Just a short disclaimer that this is for educational purposes only, and no treatment or therapy is intended. Since it's required, you must know the individual personally and the family history, past history, all those sort of things. So seek care from a qualified healthcare professional for those types of things. For education, we're free to share what we have. Well, bone first occurs in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." A rib, yes, that's what the Lord chose. Of all the 206 bones in the normal adult skeleton, he chose a rib, and not just any rib. God is intentional by design, and speculatively, it was the fifth rib on the left side. And that fifth rib is often mentioned in the Bible for other purposes in military, but the reason why it's military because it hovers right over the heart, and also it protects the same. And why is the rib important? Well, because it belongs to the axial skeletal system, which is central, and it is surrounded by flesh, and therefore it is also close to the breath, close to air. It is undergirded by a nerve, artery, and vein, so it has blood in and blood out, and has sensation, has sensitivity. It is warmed by recent circulation because the blood that comes to it is very recent from the heart. It is very close to the early aspect of blood coming from the heart. And it is surrounded by muscle, so therefore it is strength. And it is curved, and you know that a curved structure handles force differently in terms of arch. It can handle a lot more force in that way. And the rib is between the spine and the sternum, or the breastplate, or the sword of the chest. And therefore, it's a very important dynamic structure to buttress the same. And also inside of the rib, its core revitalizes systemic circulation because it has within it a certain type of bone tissue that restores blood circulation, blood health. So that rib, which was representing woman, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, that anatomically Adam was on point, flesh of my flesh, because it is surrounded. And so therefore it makes the rib a very special symbol of woman. The very first place we find bone in the body dealing with, we're talking about structure, that being spirit, structure, and substance, we come to it. So very interesting as we begin. Well, overview. Well, look, the bone, we're going to look at bone development, bone structure, types of bone, bones and hormones, bones and exercise, bone nutrition, bone and disease, and bone health factors. Those are things we're going to seek to cover in this very brief overview, but hopefully enough significance. So let's look at them Demdar bones. Osseous is its name. When you see osteo, O-S-T-E-O, osseous, a Latin term. And bone is a type of connective tissue. And there are 206 of them in the adult skeleton. And the adult skeleton, as we see here, that it is those things that are in the center line is called axial, like the skull, the spine, and the sacrum. That is the axial skeleton. And then those that are attached to it are called the appendicular skeleton, such as the shoulder blade, collarbone, and upper extremity, the hip bones, and the lower extremities. Those are appendicular skeleton. The ribs are part of the axial skeleton or the central skeleton. And so that is why it is identified as axial. And the bones, there are 3 layers that come from the embryo. As the embryo is developing in the mother's womb, David has said that his parts were known even before they were. And there's 3 layers of the embryo, and out of those 3 layers come everything that we have in the human body. And bones come out of the middle embryonic layer is where that structure begins. So osseous is his name. Time you see osteo, then you know it's related to bone. And it's a type of connective tissue. And there's 2 parts. General definitions of bones in the body: appendicular, those things that are attached to the center, and then those things that are on the center, which is we call axial. Well, the beginnings of bones. The bones come from 2 categories, from 2 basic beginnings. One from tissues or membranes, and that would be like our skull bones or head bones. So those bones are come from a membrane or membranous tissue. And then our long bones, then those bones come from cartilage. So 2 basic beginnings, but their hardness after they have matured is the same. Those bones up from the tissue and those bones from cartilage. And we have the general categorization of bones: long bones, such as, like in this case, look at the femur, flat bones, which would be like skull bones. Then there's irregular bones, like a bone that makes up the middle structure of the skull. And then short bones be like bones of our wrist, bones of our ankles be short bones. So those are the general categories of bones by which we are identified in terms of medication. And then, importantly, there are 3 kinds of bone cells, 3 kinds of bone cells. And we see that they start with osteo. So osteo lets you know it's a bone, all right? It has bone related. Osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts, okay? So blasts, actually certain other cells have blast naming to them as well. So a blast implies that it is what makes the tissue that's related in the prefix. So we have the osteo is a prefix, blast is a suffix. So blasts make whatever's that implied in the prefix. So osteoblasts make new bone. And osteocytes, they are maintainers of bone. So a osteocyte, a site, it maintains bone. A clast is a remodeler of bone. And this is the only place we have a clast is in bone. We could have cartilage, chondroblasts would be cartilage makers, or chondrocytes, which would be maintainers of cartilage, but there's no chondroclast. So clasts are only found in bone. So we're looking at making new bone. What's needed? Well, you got to have calcium, have phosphorus, and collagen, which is a protein, to make new bone. And those osteoblasts have to have those raw materials to do that. There's also other minerals found like zinc, manganese, copper, magnesium as well. But the primary things that are found in terms of metals, that's what calcium and phosphorus is going to be calcium, phosphorus, and then collagen. And the osteocytes are maintained. They maintained what the osteoblasts have established, and they are also involved in strengthening bones. Very important aspect that we'll pick up a little bit later. And osteoclasts remodel or resorb. Now, the bones that you and I have, our whole skeletal system is remodeled or removed and replaced every 10 years. So the bones you have today are not the same bones you had 10 years ago. Even though they may feel like they're old bones and maybe want to move like old bones, but our whole skeletal system is remodeled after every 10 years. And it's two cells that make up the remodeling process is osteoblasts and osteoclasts. And they are the renewing aspect for our whole skeleton, and that process goes through. So interesting, change is a part of our being. Change is a part of being. So we have to get accustomed to change on a emotional and level as well, because that is what we are about. All right, so let's look at bone types and structure. Bone types and structure. Well, bone structure, there's what we call bone matrix, and bone matrix is sort of like concrete, reinforced concrete. So it'd be like the metal put in concrete to make it firm, so it gives it added strength to it. And the cement aspect around that goes around the rebar, around the metal, is called hydroxyapatite. Okay? So the living part of bone is the collagen and glycoproteins. Collagen is the most plentiful protein in the body. Proteoglycans, these are protein sugar combinations that hold moisture and keeps the bone resilient. And it is the living part of bone. The inorganic part of bone, or the non-living, or the metal part of bone, is the calcium phosphorus crystals or compounds that give bone the strength. Now, these images below, so we're looking at a bone of the lower extremity. And if we remove the hydroxyapatite or the metal part out of bone, or the calcium phosphorus, then all we have is the collagen. And bone becomes very, very soft, okay? So it has no structure. But if we took the organic portion or the collagen portion, the living part, out, bone becomes very brittle and shatters if it is overstressed and breaks. Now, the collagen, as we are young individuals, baby, a child can fall down some stairs and cry and get up and go on about his business. But if you and I fell down some stairs, we cry and stay there because we don't have that flexibility in our bones. In fact, I sort of give an example to the students that if they took a chicken bone and put it in their favorite caffeinated drink, such as Coke or Pepsi, and leave it over some number of hours, and then took that chicken bone out, they would find that chicken bone was soft. Why? Because the phosphoric acid in the drink, in the Pepsi, et cetera, it is what leaches out the metal part of bone and makes it, gives it that flexibility. So the strength of bone is reduced by the frequent, very popular drinks that are on the market today. Well, let's look at there's two types of bones we have. We talked about bone matrix and the what makes it up, collagen and hydroxyapatite. Well, on the location of parts of bone and the ends of bone is called spongy bone, because if you took that bone, cut it on side, like we see here in this upper left image here, we see spaces. Like if you cut a sponge, if you cut a sponge, you see those spaces. Well, that's the way the ends of our long bones look like. And that's why they call them spongy. And the little arches, you see the figure below, these are the arches which sort of look like the sponge. These arches are what gives it its strength. And those arches are called trabeculae, okay? But these spaces, the one may ask, what goes in those spaces? Well, those spaces is what is bone marrow. So our spongy bone, or another word, and on the medical side, cancellous bone, it has our bone marrow, and that's what makes our red and white blood cells. So it is very key to our immune system, very key to our blood system, is the cancellous bone. We find it on ends of long bones and also the center of flat bones, such as center of bones like those bones of the skull, and also very much will be found in irregular bones that, like on the hip, that's where they have good bone marrow. Often they do bone marrow tests, and they take a sample of bone marrow out of the hip to identify if a person is having issues that they're concerned that has to do with their bone marrow. So the spaces are filled with marrow, and the lining on inside of the long bones we call endosteum. And also these red lines. Here's the key issues. Red lines, these are trabeculae, and these are lines of stress. So when we do weight-bearing activities, and based upon that weight-bearing versus walking or running or jogging, as we put stress on our long bones, those chondrocytes sense that stress, and as they are stressed, they increase the amount of bone where those areas of stress are. So the more weight-bearing activities we do, exercise, etc., and weight-bearing exercises, it enhances our bone strength or bone density. So the more exercising we do regularly, then our bones are made stronger through that particular process, because our cells sense, by God's grace, sense that stress, and they are programmed to add bone where there is stress. And therefore our bones become stronger along those stress lines. And obviously you get the picture. If we're not stressing our bones, if we're in a sedentary lifestyle, sitting on the couch with a remote in our hand, then our bones are not being strengthened. And what you don't use, you what? Lose. And the other type of bone that's on the shaft of the long bones, if we go back and look at the bone structure here. So here we see the ends of a long bone where we have the ends of the femur. So at the ends here, this is where you find spongy bone. And in the shaft, or the middle part of the bone, that's where we're going to find this type of bone called compact bone. And compact bone it doesn't have those spaces, you see. It doesn't have that bone marrow in these spaces. But this would surround the center of a long bone, and that center of the long bone would have bone marrow. But that bone marrow changes. When we're young, the center of a long bone has blood-forming tissue. But as we get older, and in terms of later teens or so, that bone marrow no longer produces red and white blood cells, but it becomes a storehouse of fat, or it becomes yellow bone marrow. But our ends of our long bones remain normally and healthy, remain red, and they continue to be producers of our red and white blood cells. So our compact bone is what's on the center of long bones. And you see these little circles we call osteons. And in the center of every osteon is a blood vessel. And these blood vessels, therefore, they supply blood through that. So bone, what we call, is very vascular, is rich in blood supply. And therefore, in a fracture, based upon where that fracture is and what type of what bone it is, a fracture will tear across the blood vessels, and a person could hemorrhage based upon the size of the bone, particularly like a hip fracture. A hip fracture could bring a person at the edge of their life, depends upon how much blood loss they lose within and around that fracture site. So bone is very vascular, and particularly our long bones, And now here is another little thing here. We see these words, you got circumferential lamellae, and between these circles, the complete circles, there's this little partial bone, and we call those interstitial lamellae. These are remnants of the osteon, the whole osteons. So these are where our bone has been remodeled, and osteons that have been broken down, and these are remnants of a remodeling process that happens to the whole skeleton. Okay, well, very good. Those are sort of foundational things, and now let's go to bone nutrition and influences on our bone structure. Bone hormones and influences. Well, there are several hormones that are important to us. All right, vitamin D. There's parathyroid hormone, which comes from the parathyroid gland, and then there are calcitonin, which comes from the thyroid gland, and then there's sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone. Vitamin D is a hormone. Vitamin D is necessary for calcium absorption, and vitamin D there's precursors to the mature vitamin D, that exposure to sunlight on the skin begins the process, and then by the liver and then the kidney, then vitamin D then is converted to its mature form and be functional, and it stimulates the gut to absorb calcium. When we eat a meal, then vitamin D is important to enhance the absorption of calcium from the GI tract. Parathyroid hormone is a hormone, four little glands on the backside of the thyroid gland. They produce a parathyroid hormone, or PTH, and they're important in increasing blood calcium level. Right? So it is tied to the particular bone cell called the osteoclast, which remodels bone. So parathyroid hormone stimulates the osteoclast to break down bone. And when our bone calcium, blood calcium gets low, our skeletal system is the great storehouse of calcium. So it stimulates a certain amount of calcium to come from the skeleton and be put into our blood system. Calcium is very important, more just for bones. It's important for nerve function, muscle function, many other things that calcium is involved in. Calcitonin, which comes from the thyroid gland, under that hormone stimulates the osteoblasts. Now remember, let's go back and look at the osteoblasts. Osteoblasts are those particular cells that make new bone. So calcitonin stimulates activity of osteoblasts, and they take calcium out of the blood and put it into our skeletal system. Whereas osteoclasts are stimulated by the parathyroid hormone to break down bone to take out of the calcium storehouse and put calcium in our blood that's needed for the various functions that we have there. And then we have estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen and testosterone. Well, let's go a little bit more and look at those a little closer. So gender hormones, and it's interesting, you know, when we look at the social challenges we have about what people say that they are and what they want to be and what versus what they biologically came to be. Estrogen obviously is the very important for women, and testosterone important for men. Both estrogen and testosterone stimulate the bones to grow. All right. Early growth is stimulated by both estrogen and testosterone. But estrogen production wanes off, and therefore the growth plate, and we'll see in the next slide, closes, and therefore women tend to be shorter because of the reduced influence of estrogen on that growth plate. Testosterone stimulates the growth plate to stay open longer, and therefore men are taller. So estrogen and testosterone work on the growth plate of bone that stimulates the growth of bone, but estrogen closes early, and therefore women are shorter. Let's sort of look at what we're talking about here. So on the ends of long bones, we have what we call the epiphyseal plate. And the epiphyseal plate, where we see the black arrow here, that is where our bones grow in length. That's where our bones grow in length. We have one here, and we have one here. And we know that this is a young individual because it has a epiphyseal plate. If it was an older individual, this growth area would become a line, would be mature bone. So we know this is growing bone, and it's a young person, and therefore this bone is going to get longer. So both the estrogen and testosterone are working on this particular area of the bone for allowing us growth in that area. But under men, testosterone stimulates this plate to stay open longer, and therefore the bone is longer, and therefore men are taller in that aspect. So God only made two genders, male and female. And in those individuals, these hormones work as they should normally in a female and in a male. And there's no changing of the dynamic architecture of the human being unless it's meddled with. It's going to still act like what it's supposed to act like, regardless to what proprietary names one may use. All right, so those are the things that are classically involved in the dynamic anatomy of the bone, the action of the bone, the function of weight bearing on bone. But unfortunately, we lose bone. And there's a variety of issues that can occur. Bones can get infected, bones can get cancer. But we're dealing with primarily today with bone loss. And that term that representing bone loss is called osteoporosis. Osteoporosis. It is an imbalance between calcium deposits and calcium losses. Now, we have talked about three hormones, parathyroid hormone, which enhances the breakdown of bone to send calcium to the blood as the body keeps track of the need for calcium. And calcium is maintained at a very narrow range within an individual. And then also calcitonin, which is stimulated when we get too much calcium in the blood. Then it takes calcium out of the blood and puts it into our skeletal system for storage. And then our vitamin D that we gain from sunlight, exposure to sunlight, enhances the uptake of calcium. from the GI tract. And then also parathyroid hormone, it not only stimulates the breakdown of bone to send calcium to the blood, but it stimulates the kidney to hold on to calcium that otherwise would go out in the urine. So it's a multifactorial process that the Creator has engineered within us. So osteoporosis is one of the leading causes of bone loss and also enhances the risk of fractures, and particularly those individuals that pass their 60th birthdays. It is more prevalent in females than males. And 3 to 1, women are 1 to 3, 1 out of 3 versus 1 out of 5 that experience broken bones because of this. Worldwide, there's about 9 million fractures. In Americans, there's somewhere around 2 to 10 million Americans with osteoporosis. There is a genetic disposition for that can, because it runs in the family, but we have to look at runs in the family, like somebody say, well, diabetes runs in my family and high blood pressure runs in my family. Well, that don't mean you and I have to run after it, okay? Because that just means that there's a predisposition for that. And that doesn't, because they have high blood pressure, does not necessarily mean you or I going to have high blood pressure, diabetes. Lifestyle modifies a lot of what we say are family issues. It is a lifestyle really is what determines what we're going to do. So there's a family disposition can be, but a person does not have to accept that genetic weakness by altering their lifestyle in such a way they don't have to go through that. So women that are greater than 50 years of age have about 15% chance. Men greater than 50, about a 4.3% chance. Because of the function of those sex hormones have a lot to do with that attitude. Now let's take a look at what osteoporosis may look like on an X-ray. Now here we see on the right side, this person look like it's a lattice network, but this is loss of bone. It shouldn't look like this. Over here, it should be more like this, okay? Where you see my cursor moving there in that structure. This is osteoporotic bone. This is horrendous loss of bone. And a lot of that comes from our diet. As I mentioned, that soda pop, such as frequent caramel-colored drinks, and you can know what those are, they have phosphoric acid in them. And phosphoric acid leaches calcium out of a bone. Now, the osteoclast, the way it breaks down bone is by acid. The osteoclast cell produces acid, and that's how it resorbs bone when it's needed for maintain calcium balance. But a diet that is prone to produce this type of thing. Also, individuals, not only just what they drink, but the lack of physical exercise, the lack of weight-bearing exercise, because the osteocytes would, on weight-bearing exercise, as that bone is stressed, would be putting down more bone where that bone is stressed. So you see, while the 8 laws of health are important inside and outside. Now, over here on this yellow structure, here is an individual that has a fracture of their hip. And this is a horrendous fracture and depends upon the fixer. Most likely, this is going to require an implant to take care of this particular fracture. But it all depends what happens in the patient, et cetera, et cetera. But this fracture is because of this type of bone structure, that when it does not have the solidity, then will break. And the most frequent area that the hip will fracture is around the neck of the femur, or the long bone of the hip. These areas is where fractures too often occurs. So lifestyle has a lot to do with this, and genetic genetic issues don't create this. It's far more lifestyle that creates a bone that is pilfered like this, that it has lost structure. And therefore, obviously, you may have a bone that's lost structure like this, and you go and put weight on it, then obviously there's nothing to keep it from breaking. All right, so let's look at some risk relationships, okay? Let's look at some things that are not modifiable. Age, obviously. Gender, menopause, that's not modifiable. Caucasian or Asian, not modifiable. Family history, you got what you was sent down the line. History of non-traumatic fractures. Sometimes people have fractures that it didn't occur because of trauma, what we call pathological fractures, and there's a variety of reasons for those things that happen in that way. So those things we can't do anything about, okay? But there are some things we can do about. What are some risk factors we can modify to reduce? Well, low body weight, okay? And low body weight, talking about those people that are around 128 pounds or less, So as we increase weight above our ideal weight, then there's obviously more stress that the structure, the skeleton has to hold, and that causes problems. Calcium and vitamin D deficiency, well, sunlight. That's one of the 8 factors, isn't it? That calcium diet, appropriate diet, we'll get to that in a little bit. Vitamin deficiency, not spending sufficient time in the sun, and particularly between on our spring to summer months, between 11 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. That's when the sun is highest and we have the greatest benefit from the sun during that time. Any sunlight is going to have some benefit, but that's when the sun is strongest to stimulate the skin to produce vitamin D, okay? Sedentary lifestyle, exercise can change that, okay? And particularly, obviously, on this group of people, cigarette smoking shouldn't be an issue, but cigarette smoking indeed decreases, and alcohol decreases the absorption of calcium that we need for our bones. And there are certain medications that are, sometimes people will need them, but anti-seizure medications are known to reduce calcium. Steroids, if steroids are taken predominantly and in high concentrations for longer than 3 months, can do that. Aromatase inhibitors. So these are those stomach acid medications. These are those stomach acid medications, protonics, etc. Those that they take to reduce the acid production because of ulcers or some other reason. But when the stomach pH is elevated, the stomach acid is necessary and beneficial for the absorption of calcium. And these medications reduce the amount of stomach acid being produced. And if you're not producing the amount of stomach acid you need, then calcium absorption is reduced, and therefore the body system suffers in that aspect. So these are modifiable things that we can do. So exercise is going to help body weight, right? And being out in the sunlight, which means you got to move to get out in the sunlight. And then in consultation with your physician or caregiver, looking at alternatives to certain medications, and diet is going to be a very important modifier of that. So we look at once again on the stress lines, that as a person is actively doing some exercise, then the body increases bone mass in these particular areas. And therefore, the osteocytes enhance laying down of more calcium where the bone is stressed. If the bone is not stressed, then the osteocytes have really no signal coming to them that you need to do some work in that aspect. So let's take a look at these hormones and how they work. And we're looking at parathyroid hormone and looking at calcitonin would come from the thyroid gland. Now, if we look at the top of the figure where number 1 is, we got 2 blue arrows, one arrow going from the blood to the bone, and another blue arrow going from the bone to the blood. Calcitonin from the thyroid gland takes calcium out of the blood under the use of the osteoblasts, because osteoblasts need calcium and phosphorus and collagen to make new bone. So calcium is taken out of the blood by the osteoblasts to make new bone. All right, new bone such as like in a fracture or that sort of thing. Parathyroid hormone. So when our bone calcium is low, parathyroid hormone stimulates the osteoclasts, and osteoclasts break down bone to send calcium to the blood for the balances that it needs for our daily function of muscle, nerves, hormones, etc. So parathyroid hormone raises blood calcium level. Calcitonin lowers blood calcium level under the balance that is required based on the signals to the central nervous system. Parathyroid hormone also, that calcium that would be lost in the urine, it stimulates the kidney to hold on to calcium and send it back to the blood. Okay? And then the bowel here, the vitamin D stimulates the bowel to increase absorption of calcium. So vitamin D works on the GI tract, parathyroid hormone works on the bone and the kidney, and calcitonin removes calcium from the blood to the bone to maintain a balance. Okay? So see, if a person had a parathyroid cancer, the person would get weak bones because it'd be overstimulating, breaking down the bone, you see. Or if a person got thyroid cancer and increasing amount of calcitonin, then they would be reducing blood calcium level and bringing it to the bone. So this is called calcium homeostasis, or calcium blood balance as we see it. So it just reminds you how much of a chemist that God is. And these things are happening at an ionic atom level in our bodies. And he has created us wonderfully and fearfully. And when you go back and follow and trace out what he's doing with the little knowledge that we have, you just say, what a wonderful God we serve. So prevention is the ounce. Prevention is the ounce. As you say, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. Okay, and many of our foundations are talking about cures. Health foundation about cures. It's good to have cures, but not so much stimulus or is on to the prevention side. In fact, many insurance companies some years back wouldn't even fund preventative care visits. They wouldn't even fund them. It's very difficult to do that. But wisdom says prevention is, the ounce is better than the pound. So what are some prevention things we could do in terms of bone loss? Well, regular weight-bearing exercises. Regular weight-bearing exercise, 15 to 20 minutes a day, according to whatever your physical structure can allow. A diet with at least about 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day, okay? And women, 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day if you're greater than 51. Men, if you're between 50 and 70, about 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day. Right? Women a little bit more because of the effect of certain hormones. And then the United States Preventative Task Force suggests that these are volunteers that of peers in specialty areas that have gotten together to see which preventative measures are most beneficial. Right? And they have said that if individuals are dwelling in a community, such as nursing home, care home, assisted living home, and they're greater than 65 years of age, then they're suggesting vitamin D supplements. Okay, and the supplementation should be about 400 units of vitamin D3, okay, and about 1,000 milligrams of calcium for non-community dwelling women. Now, screening women for this is if they're greater than 65, but according to the National Osteoporosis Foundation, that they suggest at 70, but the USAF does not suggest screening men for calcium. Okay, and PPIs, protein pump inhibitors, Prilosec, Protonix, Prevacid, Nexium, they reduce stomach acid, and therefore they reduce the pH. And if reducing the pH, then that reduces the amount of absorption of calcium. So when the stomach acid, normally stomach acid pH in the stomach is somewhere around 1. The strongest acid we know of is 0. Okay, strongest base is 14. So our stomach acid pH is about 1. So definitely within our stomachs, we have hydrochloric acid, which is about the strongest acid known, that is, our bodies are able to maintain that inside of us without digesting us because of various things like this, the mucus lining in the stomach, etc. So it's amazing that the strongest acid that we know of can be carefully managed inside of our stomach by the physiology that God has established for us. But when they're using medication to reduce that, to prevent regurgitation or other issues in the bowel, then it also has a byproduct of malabsorption for calcium. So they use that upstaff is called United States Preventive Services Task Force, which is a group of peer-level individual specialists to identify if certain screening things are appropriate for certain age groups. So prevention is the ounce: regular weight-bearing exercises, diet that is sufficient for age and women more so than men, supplementation if they're community-dwelling individuals, screening women that are greater than 65 years of age, yes, and then proton pump inhibitors if they're needed, but knowing that there's a side effect from that is going to create interruption on the balance of bone strength. And then there's certain tests that they may order, such as a vitamin D level. They may order a blood count, just seeing what our regular blood cells are, looking at or see what our calcium and phosphorus and magnesium and serum chemistry, a urinalysis to see what the status of our urine is, and then the gold standard for identifying bone mineral density is a dual ray X-ray absorption scan, DEXA, and they'll look at the hip or the lumbar spine. Okay, it's very low energy X-ray, but still this is called the gold standard, and it should be less than 1, less than or equal to 1 to be a normal scan. And then we have effects from aging. Okay, so we know as we get older, our bone matrix, which is the collagen, we don't make as much collagen as we get older. We don't have as much calcium and phosphorus. It all may be related to our diet and what we're eating. Our teeth may not be as healthy as they should to allow mastication of certain types of foods. And so our bone suffers from that. The matrix decreases, our bones become more brittle, which means they lack the collagen, which is protein that causes our bones to be brittle, so they fracture more easily than otherwise. and bone mass decreases. And our highest bone mass is when we're about age of 30. About the age of 30 is when our bone density is greatest, and after that we start losing. But that loss, the slope of the curve is dependent upon how we maintain, what our exercise is. So, the slope could be straight down, but as we increase our exercise, then we can level that curve so it's not so steep in terms of the loss that we have of bone mass. So so you see the 8 laws of health in the exercise and the water and those things, how beneficial they are. Men's bones tend to be denser because of the testosterone hormone. And therefore, men do not lose bone as quickly or early as women do. African American, Hispanic have higher bone masses than Caucasian or Asians. And after menopause, the loss of bone from women is 10 times greater than others in earlier ages, 10 times greater. So that is the estrogen effect of those issues. And the first place we lose bone is spongy bone. Let's go back and look at where that first place. So here's the end of the bone, and this is where we lose bone first. This is where we lose bone from the cancellous bone, is where we lose bone, as compared to the center bone, where is the strongest portion of that. And therefore, as we lose bone, then we obviously are more subject to fractures. We don't have those substances that allow bone flexibility, like the collagen and protein that allows that bone to flex under stress. Then that bone becomes brittle and then easily broken. And then from the loss of, obviously, individuals get stoop posture. You may have seen people who walk stooped over because they've lost vertebral height and have non-traumatic fractures that the vertebrae have fractured in their back, and they lost height, and therefore they're stooped in their posture. Those are indication of significant loss of bone health, and they also can lose teeth as well. So how do we approach this? Well, positive, we can be proactive, and we can be practical. Positive exercise, weight-bearing exercise increases bone density. Obviously, proactive planning, being intentional with our efforts to move ourselves, to do the, it's just a simple thing. How many times you drive in the parking lot of whatever store you're going to, and you park closest to the door instead of parking to the end of the parking lot so you can walk to the door? That's an easy way to intentionally add exercise to your shopping. But we're gonna look for the closest parking lot to the entrance to the store versus parking to the edge of the parking lot and using that opportunity to intentionally add exercise to that particular day, weight-bearing exercise. See? And then practical common sense, age-appropriate activities. We're not writing physical checks that our bodies can't cash. You may enjoy basketball, and dunking a basketball when you was 18, but at 48, don't try it. That's not going to work. You may tear a Achilles tendon or something, or something else, and then be stoved up for a while. So we have to recognize that when we get older, we can't do what we think we was good at doing before. So we don't write physical checks that our body can't cash. Now, there was a study done by Harvard in January 2022, and the study from Harvard Medical School. And if you eat a healthy diet, this is the rocks crying out. Okay, this is not Ellen G. White. All right. If you eat a healthy diet with lots of fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, lean protein, you'll get enough of most nutrients needed to keep your bones healthy and functioning well. That's not counsel on diet and foods from the prophet. Okay? Lots of fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, beans, lean proteins. You'll get enough of most nutrients needed to keep your bones healthy and functioning well. But some nutrients require extra effort to ensure adequate intake when we are older. That means we have to eat more and some more selection for those things to add to those areas. Now, the next slide is going to need some advice from you individuals who are trained medical missionaries. And I just, in terms of completeness, looked at some herbs that were suggested for osteoporosis. I don't use these. I don't treat people with these for that. I'm a retired physician, medical physician, but these are things that are suggested from the website. Those things that herbs for osteoporosis and herbs for bone health. So you have to take this with a grain of salt and counsel someone who practices in health ministry through herbs, etc. But it's suggesting that red sage, in terms of osteoporosis, red sage reduces free radicals, which means it functions as an antioxidant. Okay. Red clover increases density of bone. Right? Horsetail or quercetin, which increases density and also enhances density and also has calcium, increases calcium absorption. Thyme is good for magnesium and calcium. Turmeric enhances our density of bone. Lemongrass is good for osteoporosis, and gutu kola also for osteoporosis. So these are those on the that are beneficial on the osteoporosis side. Herbs that are known for bone health, okay? That dandelion herb strengthens weak bones. Horsetail works both for osteoporosis as well as for bone healing. And chamomile may strengthen weakened bones. So these are herbs that you're probably, there's many more besides this very casual list for those sort of things. So those people that are online that are seasoned in herbal use for therapies and these things would surely have much more to say than what is presented here. 2 for 1. You get a 2-for-1 benefit when you eat proteins that are also calcium rich. Okay. So calcium, therefore, you're supplying the body to the GI tract where vitamin D going to enhance the absorption of calcium from the GI tract and put it into the blood and make it available for the osteocytes, for the osteoblasts to take calcium and to strengthen bone. Okay. And what are those proteins that have increased calcium-rich? Beans, legumes, leafy greens, and nuts that are protein, but also calcium-rich. So this is that selective process that we go to enhance our outcome. And Psalms 104:14 says, he causes the grass to grow for the cattle and the herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. So God has established and provided what we need, that when he first made the earth in a perfect scenario, there was no sin. But in his wisdom, he put what was in the herbs also beneficial during the time of sin and degradation, when our bodies would be weak. So God, in his loving care for us and over us, has provided for us even before we knew we had such a need for it. Proverbs 25:15, by long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. So bones are not broken only by falls. Words also can break a bone, but the bone of resistance in this case, right? The bone of resistance in this case. And John 14:36, for these things were done that the scripture should be fulfilled, a bone of him shall not be broken. Oftentimes this is looked at that on the cross, that they would not break his bones at that time, but it has more more significance beyond that, that Jesus had a diet such that his bones would not break. That a bone of him shall not be broken, that he would have the structure and the spirit and substance, that his skeletal system was strong to meet according to what God would have him to be. And the takeaway for us, let us be that unbroken bone of his bones. Just like Adam said, this is bone and flesh, this is bone and flesh, bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Well, also, should not we be a bone of his bones? And that bone we would want to be solid and healthy bones. Would that not be true? Well, Sister Raina, this ends this portion of my talk. And we may have questions after this.
We want to say thank you so much. This was a perfect program. I mean, I think for myself, I was startled at a lot of the information because 10 times greater after menopause. I'm hurting now. Like you're supposed to look forward to menopause, and then now menopause can make you lose bones. I'm not sure. And then I think you said women lose 80% more than, and 20% men have bone loss after certain
the
ages.
women have more challenges because of the hormonal issues as compared to men, and also because early on their men's bone structures are denser in the growth process, and also with the activities that they have to do in terms of weight-bearing activities and labor, that they have denser bones in the process of life and also in the beginning of the development of bone. So therefore, they are at an advantage in that aspect.
Oh, and what about the blood loss monthly? So,
well, yeah, now the blood loss, that's another issue, but the hemoglobin of women tends to be lower. I think it's around 10 to 11 was normal, where men is somewhere around 12 to 14. But intentionally, if they keep their bone health well, and also diet-wise to eat those things that restore the blood, then they still can manage quite well. And then obviously, then menopause, then you don't have that blood loss during that period of time.
Okay, so we have one question so far. Dee, go ahead.
Hi, yes. I saw that you put that prevention methods can be like using Prilosec and stuff like that. But I thought those were harmful to the body. Can you just elaborate a little on that, please?
No, the Prilosec, those are the things that cause bone loss. I mean, they reduce the absorption of calcium from the GI tract, because the Prilosec, those things reduce the acid in the stomach that's necessary for the absorption of calcium. So no, I apologize if that came across that way. They are not supportive for bone health.
Okay, and what about the sodas? Oh my goodness. So America is hooked on sodas, right? And so do you have any particular brand? Like, are there different types of sodas? Like probably the one that starts with P?
Well, any of those caramel colored sodas that they have, you look on the label, they have phosphoric acid. And not only that, there's an issue with the caramel coloring, because I think that that has been tied to generating, have something to do with cancer or some other issue by that chemical that they use to create that color. So caramel colored drinks are just not supportive to our health. And then the phosphoric acid that you find in are typically caffeinated drinks. Besides the effect of caffeine, then we should delete those from the grocery list.
So you guys hear what he's saying, right? There's a different process that they're taking. So we think that caramel was easily derived from burning sugar. They're no longer burning sugar to get caramel. They're doing another chemical process to get it.
Yeah, that brown colored drink, the caramel that they put in there has been tied to something that's not healthy for us.
Okay, so the parathyroid. Can you tell us just one more time, how do we balance that parathyroid?
Yeah, parathyroid gland is found on the back of the thyroid, and it is used, those four little glands, and that's very significant because when a person has thyroid surgery, those glands are removed often. If they have a total thyroid surgery, then those glands are removed, and that person has to take calcium for the rest of their life because the normal managing glands and the loop for handling calcium is removed. So the parathyroid glands are those that stimulate the osteoclast to break down bone, to provide calcium to the blood when the blood range of calcium is low. The calcitonin, which is associated with the thyroid gland, that it stimulates the osteoblast that makes new bone when blood calcium level is outside of range, too high. So those are the primary manager of blood calcium level, with addition of vitamin D that enhances absorption of calcium from the GI tract to the blood.
So the proper absorption of calcium, phosphorus, very important in our diets. And there are certain things that can help us along with that.
Yes.
Okay, so you talked about the red sage. I know that that's beating back certain bacteria, because certain bacteria are also eating away at our bones, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, now the red sage was particularly mentioned because it was an antioxidant to reduce free radicals that stimulate for enhancing osteoporosis. Now, I didn't catch the aspect on my review regarding the bacteria.
Okay. So it's also amazing that we were counseled to drink red clover every day. Now, if we were obedient to that counsel, we would have been better off.
Yeah, bone
It's
density would
amazing.
be improved. Yes, bone density would be improved.
Wow. Just with red clover. And so I'll tell you another way you can have red clover. You can get red clover seeds. We're starting to do that as well. Red clover seeds and sprout them. Sprout them. All right. Do we have any more questions? What about MSM? I heard that you can use MSM. I can't say that word. It's called methyl sulfate something. I can't say it.
MSM. I'm not familiar directly with the initials.
Okay. So that's supposed to help apparently with the absorption.
MSM.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Because he shared a lot of things with us. Go ahead, Kristen. I've never heard any other program actually talk about bone health. And this to me was just really a blessing, Dr. Ben. I really got to say it was because now I know how important it is that we keep up our bone health so that we are more in tune with the ability to fight off diseases. Go ahead, Kristen.
Was that methyl sulfonyl methane? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
For
yes.
arthritis?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. That's what that was in terms of treating for arthritis. But I'm not familiar with it otherwise. Then I just looked it up. It is also from osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, which osteoarthritis really is wear and tear arthritis, whereas rheumatoid is autoimmune toward our own tissue. Our body rejects our own joint tissues as though they were foreign to us.
So 1 second before Miss Kristen ask her question. So you said there are certain groups that are more prone to osteoporosis than others.
Yes, in terms of African Americans tend to be less, whereas Caucasian Asians tend to be more.
Wow, that's amazing. And is that because they carry larger bone mass, or?
So those would be genetic issues. So Caucasian and Asians have issues that they're what we call non-modifiable issues. So whereas African Americans and I think Hispanics tend to have a greater bone mass, so it's in the genetics of issue as to why that is. But I haven't worked out particularly that why it is. They just mention as they are that Caucasian and Asians tend to have more issues with that as risk for those things than African Americans and Hispanics.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Kristen.
Okay, I have a two-part question. The first one is he talked about the Nexum and those kinds of things. And what I wanted to know was, is there the medication they put you on for nausea, like you have real bad nausea from cancer, is that harmful, to the bones? And then the second question is, my husband has rheumatoid arthritis, and what we keep noticing is that they put him on the medication for it, but he keep getting like the swelling anyway. And so I wanted to know, what can be done for that.
Now, far as the medication for nausea for chemo, when a person...
No, it's not from the chemo. I'm not taking that. It's just that, one of the stages.
So a person is not taking chemo.
No.
Oh, okay. But they're using medicine for nausea.
Yes.
Well, then you have to look at what that particular medicine is, and then what the side effects of that medication is. So you have to look at the chemical makeup of the medication, and then that could be evaluated as to what it is, what it may or may not be conflicting with. Now, oftentimes the pharmacist, if you ask the pharmacist, they will tell you not only what the contraindications of the medication is, but also what conflicts it may have and how it can affect besides what they may put on the label.
Okay.
That will help to give more direction to see what the overall effect is. But they have a book. I don't know if you have what you call a PDR, physician desk reference. You can get those from Amazon, and you can look up those medications, or you can look at it online, and you can evaluate what that medication is, what its side effect is, what percentage of people that when they were doing the testing on it, what percentage of those that were affected in certain ways by that medication.
Okay.
Okay, Miss Barrett, go ahead. All right, we're gonna go to Miss Joy. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, good evening, and thank you, Rowan, Dr. Ben. My question is about collagen. Since collagen, along with calcium, diminishes as we ages, what do we do about replenishing collagen in the body?
Now, collagen is a protein, so that would be a protein substance, a protein. So eating those fruits and vegetables, that will give us the protein that we need. Oftentimes when people see that you're vegetarian or vegan or plant-based, they'll say, where do you get your protein from? Well, everything, there's not a plant yet that's not been made from protein. So protein is the most plentiful thing for making our structure in our bodies. So a variety of foods and sufficient amounts of foods, in terms of plant-based foods, we're going to get the protein. In fact, those people that are vegans get far more protein than people that are animal-based diets. So there's no issue with protein. If we're plant-based, eating adequate amounts of plants for a diet in terms of calories, you're going to get the protein. It's not going to be an issue of being short on protein. And then that protein will be used as the body, under its direction, to make those things that need for structure, for tissues, etc., as well as bone.
Okay, so the collagen for vegans is a little bit more challenging, I guess, because the corn is where we would get, I believe it's the lysine,
Mm-hmm.
and that lysine is where we would replenish a lot of our collagen. But I heard it's from corn, and because of our corn being GMO'd, we have to wait. As Joel said, he will restore the corn, the oil. We are waiting for that time where we'll be able to eat corn again. We've been destroyed in certain areas, and even now the wheat. I noticed that you talked about the manganese,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes, the largest portion, I think, of manganese is in the wheat family. And so we have to look for the best types of wheat to be able to consume that.
Yeah, I've heard, I think through nutritionfacts.org, talking about organic versus non-organic. Organic is by far the best in terms of chemical, pesticides, that sort of thing, overlay. But if that is not available, the plants that even and the chemicals that they have been putting on plants, are horrendous. They do that just to increase their bottom line in production, and without any thought to the health of the consumers. So that's a very appropriate term. But in terms of the amino acids that are utilized to make collagen, you have the proline, the glycine, and the hydroxyproline. Those, and plus with their proper amount of vitamin C, zinc, and copper, etc., which make up that collagen. So it's a variety of amino acids or parts of protein molecule, and therefore the variety of foods that we eat. And if we can choose organic, that is far better. Even better than that, if we can grow it ourselves. There we beat it twice. Okay. And therefore we can have a safe produce and know where it's coming from, what was put on it. So getting on, as the prophet has said, we need to get into the country and grow our own foods and learn to grow our own foods, because as the way the marketplace is going, we're going to be moved out of the store and they're not going to be able to supply it. And so we look at the types of plants we make, to knowing intentionally that these types of plants are going to have these kinds of proteins, this type of ingredients in it, and putting those together, then we're going to be able to maintain what we need for our healthy life.
Yes. Amen. All right, Miss Barrett, go ahead.
Yes. Yes, I didn't ask my question before. I was just talking about MSN. Anyway, the question is, if you never take soda, is it possible for you to have brittle bones? You said soda is one of the things that you use.
Well, soda is one of those caramel colored, dark colored sodas, and the phosphoric acid. You have to look at the drink and what's on the side of the drink. Typically associated with caffeinated drinks, but you want to see if that has phosphoric acid or acid in it, because that is what it utilizes to break down our bone. But yeah, there would be a benefit if soda was not on our list. But we have to look at other issues as well in terms of sufficient exercise, sufficient diet, and fruits, vegetables, and legumes, that we're giving our body the raw materials to make what it needs to sustain our tissues and our bones.
Yes. You mentioned so much here that we have to go back on, because you said the sunlight, of course, is one of the 8 laws of health, that vitamin D, keeping our hormones in proper balance. There's just so much to this. And then if you're in a certain race, you're going to lose more than another race. I think I was in the other race. But
that's modified. That's modified by lifestyle. So
yes. So, but this, Miss Barrett, I think she might have come on just a little bit later, and we're sorry, Miss Barrett, but there was a long line of things that he shared with us as far as bone loss was concerned, and just balancing the hormones. I like when you said the blood flow, the trabeculae. I'm sorry.
Trabeculae. That's right. Trabeculae.
The trabeculae, that activity going to that area would cause us to strengthen the bones. So
That's
we
correct.
need to be doing weight training. So even Miss Barrett can be doing weight training, right?
Well, weight bearing. Weight bearing. That's
Okay.
Walking, jogging. Walking is probably the most efficient exercise. But anything walking minimally, and then jogging if you're able to do that, and those who are runners. But walking alone, if you're walking at 20 to 30 minutes a day at a reasonable pace, where you build up just a little bit of perspiration on your brow, and do that 3 times a week, then you're getting that weight-bearing exercise and stimulating those osteocytes on those stress areas of the bone that will enhance bone density, even whatever age you are. If you're able to do that, you're going to build some of those out.
Okay, Miss Alice, go ahead.
Hi, pleasant good night. Well, it's night where I'm at here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
from Trinidad. I'm really enjoying your presentation. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Um, I just want to present a little scenario for you. I have a wrist pain for the longest while. It's not carpal tunnel, but recently I purchased something called magnesium chloride in the spray form. So it's in the form of an oil. So you just spray it on, and I found that to be quite useful. How
Mm.
important it is for me or for us to get enough magnesium. So I know we'll get this from our nuts and our legumes and beans and stuff like that, and green leafy. But spraying it directly, I must say I did get an ease. So is it that I was lacking before? Is it that the muscle is constantly in tension? Because it's my right arm and I write with it all the time, my right wrist, sorry. And so I don't know if it was lacking. So when I sprayed it, it really relaxed the muscle and I felt great. Could you give me some more on this, please?
Well, let's use this scenario. If we have a hand on our arm and we cut that hand off, when we remove that hand, it's still a hand, but it obviously not going to function as it was when it was attached. And God has packaged those things that we need in terms of minerals and food components in a package that when we eat the whole food, we get more benefit from those individual ingredients than if we separated the ingredients from the whole food and took them. So I'm not sure how your magnesium is working or the indication for that. Some things are necessary to be supplemented, but the creator's wisdom is that when it is taken with the whole food, it works better than when it is separated by itself. So I can't speak directly for that issue without knowing some very important issues as to why it is, if there's a lack, if there's or what actually is occurring on the topical application of that.
Mm.
But the ingestion of the whole food is going to bring that to the particular tissue that are in needed.
So I would like to ask a question to everyone. How many people here like bread? If you can just raise your hands, how many people like bread? No one.
Like
So
what? What was
bread,
it?
bread,
Bread.
bread,
How many people like bread?
bread.
BREAD. Okay.
Yes, bread. So only 3 people like bread now, because we've gone to this the gluten-free world, right? and my grandfather was a baker, so I couldn't be a gluten-free girl. But I had someone that told me years ago that bread was going to finally stick to me once I got older. Well, so I did the thing and stopped eating a lot of bread for loads of years. But then I recognized there was something that was going on in the bread world that really imbalanced our hormones. And many people don't know. It's called bromine.
Mm,
Now, I want you guys to go and do some homework
mm.
because I won't tell you anything else. But now you see why so many women are suffering. I'll tell you one little clue. It's throwing off your hormones. So it would be of a benefit for us. Someone mentioned icorn, but we still need, like, icorn is like a low protein flour. And yeah, a lot of people like it, but the Lord balanced us in this wheat, right? He put some protein in there and he put what we needed. So, go for the spelt, go for the organics, go for the better flours, because most, I would say probably 99% of these breads that we're buying in the store are causing us havoc. So there's where we're going wrong. But bread is the staff of life. So it's the fact still remains. So I can't be gluten free, and I'm so sorry for the gluten freers, because if my father told me bread is the staff of life, I got to go back to my father and say, okay, now, Father, which bread can I eat? All right. So
That what you make. That what you
yes.
make.
Yes. 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 So we got to go back to the staff. You got to start reading what they ate in Bible days. Go ahead, Miss BC. BC.
Yes, morning. Sorry, good evening. Yes, morning here. No, I was just saying, since you talked about the bread, we just so you're saying it's best to use spelt flour instead of the normal wheat flour, because I've read, yes, that wheat is really not good anymore. So if you can help us with that. But more importantly, I'm not sure if I can ask doctor here. Thank you so much. I just came in. So in line with calcium bones, my friend is plant-based and he just found out he had gout. So I had a shock because I thought plant-based you won't get gout. So is there a reason for that, if it's okay to ask here on this platform? Thank you.
You're asking about why?
Gout and being plant-based. So she's not the only one. Your friend is not the only one. It's a kidney issue, basically. Gout.
Yeah.
Oh.
They don't relate gout to kidney at all. Very, very big problem happening right now. There's so much toxins out there. You can't just say I'm just plant-based and I can't get gout. Your urine is put in a lot of things. It's in your shampoos. It's in a lot of things. Just look it up. Urea. So uric acid doesn't just come from animals anymore. We are ingesting it in a lot of ways that we may not know. So there's a lot going on, Miss BC. And so we have to pray to our Father and ask him, Lord, what will you have me to do? And that's the answer. It's our communication with him. He's helping us. He's the only provider of health. The only provider.
Mm-hmm. And the doctor said that it's because of a lot of sweet fruits that he's taking. So it's like, we all do take sweet, probably like mangoes, and I don't know. This was just what he mentioned. So I thought, yeah, calcium bones, and I thought maybe I just check it out with you all since I'm here.
Yeah, that doesn't quite come together, and at least not on the superficial level that uric acid. Gout typically, if a person is not a meat eater, because typically meat eaters, they get gout from the other white meat, and it's the urine that would be on the way to the animal's kidney that they're eating in the animal's meat, and then our kidneys have to process that, and then it ends up collecting like glass crystals in their joints, and there's the problem.
Yeah, there's so much, Miss BC. It really, really is. We used to have something called the elimination diet. And so that person would have to go now and put everything down what they're eating, because if you look in bread alone and you see something called mono and diglycerides, if it doesn't say vegetable, that's from a meat source. And so most people aren't even looking at those things. We don't know how to read every ingredient, but if it has too many, if it doesn't say flour, yeast, water, oil, salt, then you've got too much in there. And so the industry is hiding a lot of things. And for us, we need to be detectives. Pray and be detectives.
USDA allow them to hide those things, that,
yes.
For instance, if they say fat-free, they've established, well, if it's not more than 1% or 2% fat, you can say fat-free. But they're allowing them to put things in that common sense says, well, it's in there, but they say if it's not a certain percentage, then you don't have to label it. So
that's right.
It's an issue.
That's right. Okay, Miss BC, we pray that will be help for your friend. All right, we're going to take someone that hasn't been on. up here because we're on the same long line again, but hold on, Sam, we're going to take Sam.
Hi, thank you so much, doctor. I just have a question that is, my mom was diagnosed with some bone issues. They said her calcium level is very low, and the doctor prescribed, along with the calcium tablets that he gave, he asked her to take, cow's milk every
Mm.
night before she went to bed. And when I tried explaining to her that it's not good, she told me that the doctor had asked her to do so. So can you throw some?
Yeah, the cows, the various associations that propagate the drinking of milk, and they have said, well, you drink your milk for your calcium, but the milk, the cows are engineered animals, and they have some place will engineer that cow has to produce milk 302 days out of 365 by the chemicals or hormones that they put into the animal. And therefore, the people or individuals who drink that milk are getting hormones that are not necessary for them. The cow only produces the milk when it is pregnant for the calf that needs to grow quickly in a very short period of time. But we who, let's say particularly for a man, I'm not pregnant. Why should I be getting hormones to benefit a calf? And it is not helping me, nor do I have a calf to do that. So, and actually they've done studies that people who drink milk actually have more fractures of bones than people that don't. You see? So there's too much. Milk is a cocktail, and particularly the way it's being farmed and with the animals that are being done and how they're being done. We're the only species that goes back, that as an adult goes and drink milk. Animals don't do that. As adult, cow, calf, dog, you don't drink milk. So milk is not the answer. Milk is the detriment to us, and it definitely does not improve our fracture resistance. In many studies, that people who drink milk have more fractures than people that don't drink milk. Our calcium source should be plant-based. Sesame seeds, you get more, I think, more calcium in a teaspoon of sesame seeds than an 8-ounce steak, without having all the other additives or poisons with it. So the milk issue, you have to kindly present, doctor, is there another alternative besides milk? There's soy milk, there's almond milk, there's other milks that are available that are calcium reinforced without having to get the hormone overlay that comes from cow's milk.
Okay, so we are on our way to closing because we don't want to wear out Dr. Benn. We thank him so much. And I tell you, just a blessing. A lot of the missionary world, we have not heard about bone health. And it is really, really serious. We need to be talking to the women about how much bones loss you're going to have just because of menopause. So first, you have this monthly, and then the monthly goes away, and we're stuck. This is Dr. Benn. You did me in for today, because everybody's running to be on menopause, and then menopause comes with its own issues. So, yeah.
But the 8 laws will help modify the curve. So,
yes. So Butterfly, I think, was asking a question. I think Miss Barrett, that's just her hand still up. Butterfly, did you ask a question? And whoever else, I'm sorry. I hope we didn't forget anyone else. Okay, she may not be asking a question, but we're so grateful again for this. Miss Barrett is asking a question. Okay, go ahead, Miss Barrett. Miss Butterfly, go
Yes,
ahead.
yes. What about yeast? Is yeast good for you to take that make the bread? Because I heard the yeast
Yeah.
also weaken your bones or something like that. So I haven't been making bread. I make flatbread. So what do you think about the yeast?
I'll defer that to Sister Rada. She's in the house, the kitchen.
You know, here's the thing. Yes, let me tell you, anything that it takes an industry. Our biggest yeast industry is called Red Star. So let's go figure that word out. And you know, we just have like, I gotta say, crooks on the top. You guys forgive me for just telling you that yeast is not bad because the Bible told us it was good, but it's your distributors or your makers that may be having the problems. And I'm not saying Red Star is bad. I'm just saying that whatever they may be putting in the yeast may be your problem. So we may have to go back to the old system of making your own yeast through flour. And that's not too hard. If you want to ask my mom, she could probably teach you.
I asked her for a recipe of that yeast. That
I don't know. You gotta get with her because I don't know why she won't come out with the recipe. She's looking
sourdough
at me. I'm
bread.
laughing, you guys.
I asked her for that sourdough recipe a long, long time.
Yes, yes. So I heard that fresh yeast is better than the yeast that we get, like this dried yeast. There, my grandfather, he used to get fresh yeast as well. There's so much going on, you guys.
Red yeast, and what's the other one? Red and
No, no,
what?
no. The largest, one of the largest distributors of our yeast. It's Red
Okay.
Star. Red Star. That's the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
No. I'm not saying good or bad. We just anything that's packaged now it's a issue because there may just be one item that may be causing a problem. Yes. All right, Miss Barrett. But you're doing a great thing. Flatbread is great. If you make good flatbread, you'd be happy.
I don't master it as yet, really.
You didn't? Oh, I'm so
No.
sorry. Well,
Yeah.
then just go get some good organic yeast, then you'll be happy. whatever makes you
I
happy,
didn't
as
find
long
any
as you look at
organic one yet. I didn't see any
okay.
organic one where I
Yeah,
am.
there are organic ones. You can order it offline.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, because most of the yeast is grown on GMO corn. So that's your problem. So I tried to tell that to people and they didn't want to hear it. But yes, GMO corn is your issue in yeast.
Okay, Dr. Ben, is it possible to have osteoarthritis if you have if you're vegan, plant-based?
Of course. Of course, he doesn't have to answer that. I'll help him with it. Yes, of course. It's happening to all of us because he actually showed just through hormones and different things. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And
Thank
so
you.
we take good blood, right, Dr. Ben? We take good blood to feed our healthy bones. And if you have female issues, things happening every month, large amounts of blood loss, then you can't have good blood to produce healthy bones.
Okay.
Mhm. All right, Butterfly. I'm gonna ask to unmute. And then iPhone. Okay, Butterfly, we can't hear you. Oh, we're not hearing. Okay, we'll hold for you. All right, iPhone, let's go.
Okay. Dr. Ben, do you think with the integration of diet changes and increase in exercise and integration of all the 8 laws of health, the level or the intensity of the osteoporosis can be converted?
No, not converted, not converted. it will be stayed or reduce the extension thereof,
Good.
but not to replace it. Now, so good bone health is to prevent that from happening in the beginning. But once it has occurred, I'm not aware of it, that level of osteoporosis to be restored, but to prevent any further or prevent the extension or to slow the speed down of osteoporosis, because some things are not modifiable, such as age or menopause or being female, etc., or gender, or in terms of ethnic race. But through the diet process, and let's not forget that if our intention is to be healthy for the Lord, then prayer and asking him to add to what we can do, that he will participate in that as well, because he can do things inside of us that we don't know is happening, that would not happen unless we asked him.
That's encouraging. We can stay the process. It doesn't have to worsen.
That's right.
It can, if it's occurred, it doesn't have to get any worse. The other thing, Raina, is that, Sister White does encourage us when we are making bread, to wait 24 hours.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yes.
yes. And
Yes.
she says that probably, I know Council on Diet and Foods, it's in more than one place, but that is also important as well.
Yes.
When we're making the bread with
Thank
yeast.
you so much. Thank you so much, sis, because that, I believe, is another thing that's weighing heavily on America. We eat pizza, and every time you go to eat pizza, they're giving you live yeast. So you want to wait 24 to 48 hours. That is the counsel, great counsel. All right. I don't know. Butterfly is able to unmute, but she'll be our last question. Okay. Well, Dr. Benn, we thank you. We are so grateful for this program. It's one that's, yes, it's one that was really missing, because bone health, as people age and they have cancer and those types of things, bone health is really affected, and it's never talked about. So we're grateful. All right.
Yes, it's our structure for the upright, for sure.
Yes. Amen. Amen. And somewhere in scripture, the Lord promised that he would make fat our bones.
That's right. That's right.
So, and he said he'll restore the years the locust has eaten.
That's right. That's right.
So we have to hold fast to those promises, hold fast. So we want to have special prayer again. We want to pray for my family, a few families that are suffering because of the loss of life, but that we know that a greater day is coming. And if we hold fast, we will see our loved ones again. And that is the promise that God has given us. And so, Dr. Benn, are you able to close us out in prayer?
Sure. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Father, you know our needs. You know the challenges before us. You know the faith walk. And you know what you're asking us to endure. We know that during our lives, those who are close to us, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, mother, fathers, only have a certain amount of time on the planet. But we know that those who die in Christ will live again. And therefore, we should ensure that everyone who's able to hear and listen, that Jesus is the makeup of their structure, that he is moving within their fluid system, that he is in the forefront of their brains, and that he is made evident through the marks of their hands. Lord, we just pray for comfort for those who have lost those that are close to them, who have died. And we pray and hope in that they have done their due diligence, that they have closed their eyes in hope to see him in peace. Lord, you've given us wisdom. You provided things in our plants, in the atmosphere, to sustain us. And though we are ignorant of those things, but yet bring it to our minds or direct us in certain ways that we can read or bring to our minds of things that are necessary, particularly to us individually, as well as a group. Help us to eat as the Father has directed in the very first chapter of Genesis of the Bible, that he gave us the green herb and is for our service. That means service for health, service in